Well, good afternoon, and thank you in advance for helping us discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is our newest planning area for strategic planning. My name is Selena Samuel, and I have the privilege of serving as the Interim Senior Vice President of Business Operations for the college, and I'd like to share a few housekeeping items with you before we begin. So first, I want to thank all of you for your continued participation in this process. And I also want to thank Patrick Butcher, Kevin Fowler, Bruce Mackley, Karen Tomasillo, Marilyn Twine, and the entire executive leadership team for the various roles that you have played and that you will continue to play in this strategic planning process. And last but not least, I want to thank our president, Dr. Robinson, for his leadership and how he continuously welcomes employee feedback and his appreciation for transparency and differing points of view. So please give a warm virtual hand clap for yourselves as participants and others that I mentioned for the unique roles that they play. Thank you to everyone. As you can see, employee feedback is extremely important at Lansing Community College. These sessions are just one of the ways that we solicit feedback from our employees. We also have an employee concern email box that employees can use year-round if they have a concern or would like to express an opinion. The email address is simply employeeconcern@lcc.edu. We also send out a periodic climate survey. The climate survey allows you to provide feedback on your experience at LCC as an employee. So it's quite different than what we're doing here today with strategic planning, but it is equally as important. Our next climate survey will take place this spring. Please be on the lookout for your invitation to participate. Rest assured, it is an anonymous survey conducted by a third party. We use a third party for various reasons, but most important is because we want to receive candid feedback. So I encourage all employees to take the survey. It will launch on March 22nd, and you will have 4 weeks to fill it out. Information on our most recent climate survey that we did a couple years ago can be found on the internal strategic directions page, along with all of the previous materials for this strategic plan refresh process. So now that we've gotten those things out of the way, I would like to turn it over to our president and CEO, Dr. Steve Robinson, for the official welcome for this event. Dr. Robinson?
Oh, thank you, Dr. Samuel. And here we go with our fourth Friday session. I just want to briefly thank everyone for their continued participation. This week's theme is incredibly important: diversity, equity, and inclusion. Cannot wait to get started with this conversation because, as you know, we've had great work on this particular matter in the past, but we are being much more intentional about weaving it into our strategic plan and in our equity action plan. And so we're very interested to having an open-ended conversation where you can provide all kinds of feedback on what we're doing as a college in this very important area of our identity and our mission. So I want to thank you all for being here, and also just add my appreciation to Dr. Samuel and everyone who is working hard to do this work remotely in a virtual environment. We've talked about it before. Most of the time we do this in a conference setting with butcher paper and Post-it notes and tables and coming back and forth. I think this has been going very, very well. And if you do feel that there are ideas that don't fit into these sessions, that is what our wonderful email address is for. So the design of this process is supposed to be very open, very transparent, and we want to hear from you and get your authentic feedback. So have a wonderful, engaging conversation. And with that, let's get started with a very important topic for LCC: diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Our facilitator for today requires little introduction. She is known across Michigan as an expert in diversity, equity, and inclusion, and I believe she will be nationally known for this topic in the future, if not already, for the great work that's going to be done here at Lansing Community College as it relates to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and our equity action plan. Whenever she leads a discussion, it is truly an experience, so please join me in a virtual hand clap of appreciation for the one and only Dr. Tanya Bailey.
Oh my goodness, Dr. Samuels, I'm taking you on the road. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday to you. Happy Friday, payday Friday, might I add at that. LCC, you are LCC strong, and I am super excited to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you for tuning in. Over 80 some people have joined in right now, and I know more are going to be coming in. So please tell your colleagues, tell others to join in and be a part of this important conversation. I believe, Patrick, you're going to be sharing my slides for me. I hope yes. And it's great.
It's running right now, and you have
Oh.
control on your end.
Okay, no, I'm going to give you all the power. I'm giving you all the power. But thank you so much for that great introduction, Dr. Samuel. And might I say, you're doing a fabulous job coordinating such an amazing, amazing large feat for LCC. And it's probably easy to do because of the fearless leader we have in Dr. Steve Robinson. What can I say about that amazing president? Thank you so much. And then obviously to all of my ELT colleagues and faculty, staff that have taken out time to be a part of this. I salute all of you because all of you matter. So let's go forward and talk a little bit about DEI. I deliberately placed this slide in our sharing today because I wanted us to take a note to note that our success really depends on our diversity. It depends on every member of LCC prospering. It depends on all of us operating and putting the community back into community college. And that means people coming with their own perspectives and their own identities and their own abilities to be able to contribute and feel included in that regard. And so we know that nationally it has been studied that diverse businesses and diverse organizations that have a focus on inclusion, equity, yes, those institutions tend to do far much more performing than others that tend to have a laser or limited view. And I'm really excited that LCC is now making DEI a formal focus point for our strategic plan refresh. And I can't wait to talk more about it. Let's go to the next slide. So I want to make sure that as we go forward, that there's just a couple of things that I help frame our thinking as we get ready to go into a great brainstorming session. The first is that it really takes time to do anything when you're talking about diversity, equity, and inclusion. This is not a one-shot wonder, right? Or one-hit wonder. This is not a checkbox. This is not a token initiative, and it's definitely not the job of one person or one division. This is the work of us all. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is about having cross-functional work done. It's about everybody's voice and every person's input being brought to the table and valued and given an opportunity to speak about it. But it's also important that we should note it's never finished. So even as we begin to talk and strategize and brainstorm, that's just another step in the direction that we know will be successful for LCC. It's definitely about being inclusive and it's about being accountable. Next slide, please. So let me give our purpose statement. The purpose for today and for this particular focus area is to really confirm how LCC defines diversity, equity, and inclusion. It is also to identify and discuss strategic issues that may impact this focal area, and that's why you're here and why your voice really matters. Our brainstorming time is designed for you to unleash and yes, think about those big, audacious goals, but I'm going to encourage you to do something today that maybe you haven't heard before. I just termed this coin a couple of weeks ago, and it's called Dream Operatives. Can somebody put that in the chat for me? Dream Operatives, or hashtag DO. Because when we talk about diversity, thank you, Martine, we talk about diversity, equity, inclusion, it's not something that's conceptual, it's about doing. And that's what these brainstorming sessions today is going to be reflective of, us talking about how we can become dream operatives. All right, let's go to the next slide. Diversity, equity, inclusion is about raising awareness. So as you're thinking in these brainstorming rooms, I want you to be thinking about how we can raise awareness, how we can make a difference, not just talk about being a difference. And then what types of actions that we can take in order to not only put LCC on the map, but to make sure every person that's a part of this LCC feels as if they have a spot on the map. All right, next slide. So let me give over an overview of some definitions to help make sure that we're all on the same page. Diversity is referring to a variety of human differences, a variety of personal experiences. In fact, just go ahead and put in the chat right now, hashtag variety, because I want that word to stick with you as you think about diversity. It means welcoming worldviews and being open to political views, veteran status, and yes, working with various racial and ethnic groups and so much more. African Americans, Asian Americans, LGBTQ plus populations, people with disabilities, which we often forget, indigenous, so much more. Diversity is like a variety and making sure all of our needs and all of our perspectives is represented. Next slide, please. Let's talk now about equity, which many people get confused with equality. So equality is about fairness and everybody getting the same amount. Equity refers to an ongoing practice. Yep, you know, you was coming, right? Hashtag ongoing, right? It's never done because we're constantly being outstanding and improving all at the same time. Equity refers to us constantly looking at our practices and identifying which things are causing barriers that are within our procedures, our processes, and distribution of resources within our structure or in our system. Now, inclusion, I think we all kind of got that, but let me give our definition that we'll work from there. It refers to an act. And you already see it coming, right? Inclusion is hashtag act, hashtag act, because to be inclusion or to practice inclusion, it means I am deliberately making sure that we're creating a safe and welcoming environment for everyone, that they feel invited, accepted, respected, supported, and valued. I like to say often that diversity is like everybody getting an invitation to the coolest party ever. That's diversity. Everybody got the invitation. Equity is the different modes of transportation that we all use to get to the party. I might be driving in a Chevette. Some of you may not remember Chevettes, but they were really good on gas. You might be driving in a Rolls Royce. Some might be using their jet to fly in. Different modes of transportation actually represent the type of equity that's needed for those individuals. And then inclusion is being invited to dance once we get to this amazing party called DEI. Let's go to the next slide. If this picture would help further summarize the definition of diversity, equity, and inclusion, I'm hoping it will be remembered in your brainstorming sessions. Notice here this small picture on the bottom left of your screen. Everyone has equality. Everybody's got a box. But as you can tell, although we all have a box, not everybody can see the game. When we are distributing equity fairly and with respect to everyone's need, then everyone can participate. I really like the graphic where it's a third picture and there's no fence at all, no boxes needed. That's when we are really dealing with systemic issues that often come against DEI work. So I want you to have those things in mind as we get ready to go forward in our discussion sessions. Next slide. A couple of strategic issues I believe are going to help frame some of our discussions, but it's definitely not conclusive. There's room for you today to talk about and add to what are some of the issues that we haven't talked about. But let me give you a few to help in your discussion. Number one, we are looking at issues that we can make sure that DEI, diversity, equity, inclusion, is integrated, embedded in everything that we do. Yes, I like to consider the Office of Diversity and Inclusion as the free space on the bingo card. We touch everything so that everybody can win, across, diagonally, you name it. But in order for LCC to win, that would mean we need to diversify our student and our employee populations. That would mean we need to make sure DEI practices are in everything that we do. Another issue would be to enhance our recruitment and hiring retention, which my colleague James Mitchell mentioned at a previous strategic planning. I thought it was necessary to add that as a part of our strategic issue because it's important that we are focused on how we diversify our hiring and retention, and not only diversify it, but make sure that when folks are a part of the LCC family, they're a part of it for life. That might mean doing some state interviews to see why people love LC so much. That might mean doing a variety of different things to ensure that our climate is conducive to the cultures that we want to see. Another issue is to address our student achievement, particularly in areas of marginalized or minoritized groups that have not been progressing or completing their college goals as we would like. The other issue is to create an inclusive environment where the culture and the communication is the norm, not where just 4 or 5 departments are really strong in DEI and the others are still like, we don't really know what to do, so we don't do it. No, we want a college community that's inclusive of everyone, and inclusive practices are our norm. The other issue I'd like for us to consider in our brainstorming sessions is to talk about how we can provide innovative engagement and transformative educational experiences. That's just not in our classroom, but that's also in our workspaces too. And that might mean for us to provide more enhanced or create modules where training, orientation, employee support, faculty support, and yes, expanding on our K-12 relations. Thank you, Dr. Glasgow, for what you do. DEI being an uncertain revenue stream is also being mentioned here because, as many might know, the history of DEI goes all the way back to the Civil Rights Movement, and some consider it a fad or just a trend. I believe because of those historical barriers, DEI can often get lost in our revenue streams and where we need to be placing emphasis and dollars. And that's why I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts and comments on how we can brainstorm, perhaps maybe on a DEI capital campaign. Woo-hoo! Who would have thought, right? Or perhaps we can look at ways that we can designate funds for populations that desperately need resources in order for them to succeed. Lastly, but definitely not least, because I know you're going to add to this amazing strategic issue list, I want us to think about how we can provide a DEI leadership, not just so we can, pat ourselves on the back that we're so great, but I believe that we have an opportunity to be a leader, both locally and nationally, and yes, internationally, about doing good diversity, equity, and inclusion work. The time is now for us to lead. Community college have always been the bedrock of community success. So why not take it to all of those different regions with DEI? Let's go to the next slide. Selena, I think I have teased it up enough and hopefully got folks excited to go into a very robust brainstorming session. And I sure do hope that folks are ready to contribute because it takes all of us, not just the me. Thanks so much. Back to you, Selena.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. And I appreciate everybody already giving you a warm applause for that. That was awesome. Thank you for really putting diversity, equity, and inclusion in context for us. And thank you for all of those definitions. I'm excited that we're all invited to this cool party and that the time is now for us to act. The time is now for us to lead in this area. So thank you, Dr. Bailey. And what we're going to do is the same thing we've done in time past. Patrick is going to break us up into brainstorming groups of between 5 and 8 participants. And when you get in that group, he's also, even before you get to the group, he's going to provide access to a file for you. And on that file, it's going to be worksheets within a PowerPoint presentation that's going to help you with your conversation in terms of brainstorming about DEI. When you get in your groups, it's going to be very important that you do a couple things. First, introductions. You may or may not know the people that are in your group. So it's really important that we make sure we know who we're speaking with today. The other thing that we want to do is assign some roles. We need a facilitator and we need a scribe. So those of you that volunteer to be a facilitator, you will be responsible for leading the discussion and making sure that the group stays on track. Now, the scribe will be responsible for recording group member names and the results of the brainstorming session. At the end of the brainstorming session, they will also be responsible for emailing all the wonderful ideas to strategicplan@lcc.edu. Each group is going to be able to use that PowerPoint presentation to guide their conversation. As in times past, I will pop into each session just to listen and to make sure that if you have any questions or concerns that they are addressed. Now, the brainstorming session will end at approximately 2:45 p.m. And this is important because most of today is focused on brainstorming. We really want to be able to hear from you. Well, we know that we do not have more than 200 employees today. However, we may have people that are joining us on YouTube Live. And so I always want to invite you, if you're a part of the YouTube Live session, to come on and join us in the WebEx. And the link for the WebEx you can find in the operations email, the star, or in the star from February 4th. So you can find that link there. And it's also on our website. But either way, you're welcome to come in so that you can be a part of one of these work groups, because sometimes you can have really robust discussion within these groups. Now, I understand there's some people that have told me in the past that they prefer not to be in a work group and they prefer to stay on YouTube, which is perfectly fine. You can send your thoughts to strategicplan@lcc.edu. So when you go into your breakout session, this is what the file is going to look like. And as I'm showing this to you, Patrick can begin making the file available to everybody. Again, we reiterate the definitions because we want to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing, that we're all defining diversity, equity, and inclusion in the same way. And the only thing that's different about this focus area from other focus areas that we reviewed is that we will stick to the definitions that are listed here because these are the same definitions that are in our equity action plan. So keep that in mind. But as in times past, we will provide a platform for you to look at each strategic issue and to come up with your thoughts about how we can address it. We provide examples for you so that they can initiate conversation. If you need additional space, please know that you can use the notes section in the PowerPoint, or you can just add an additional slide. After we get finished with this brainstorming session, we're going to come back. And what we're going to do this time, because this is our newest focus area, we're going to actually have 10 minutes of Q&A with Dr. Bailey and myself if there's any questions that came up and people would like to bring that forward. And then, as usual, we will close out with some closing comments from our president, Dr. Robinson. So again, thank you everybody for your time. We appreciate each and every employee, and we appreciate even anyone else that's on the line. I know that we may have trustees that are also joining us today, and we just want to say thank you for joining us, and we appreciate your attendance also. So with that, Patrick, I will turn it over to you to make sure that everybody has a file and that everybody gets into a breakout session. And again, anybody on YouTube, remember, you're welcome to join us, but you're also welcome to stay on YouTube if you choose to, and just send your thoughts to strategicplan@lcc.edu. Thank you. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I hope that you had some great breakout sessions. I was privileged to sit in on a couple, and honestly, I heard some great dialogue, some great ideas. So I appreciate everyone and appreciate their participation. Because this is a new focus area for us, we wanted to make sure that we had a little bit of time for some Q&A, just in case there were some questions about diversity, equity, and inclusion at LCC. So I'd like to invite Dr. Bailey to join me so that if there are any questions, it'll be easy for you to just go ahead and answer those. And if you do have a question, Patrick, if you could just let me know if you see anything in the chat, either on YouTube or in the main chat, because we want to make sure we catch everyone.
Will do.
Okay. Do we see anything?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Wait a second.
Well, while we're waiting for that, one of the most interesting conversations that I had was when I was in the group with Dana, and I can't remember who else was in the group, but there was a conversation about the evolution of diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And so I think it would be a great idea, Dana, if you could share some of that conversation, and then I would be very much interested in Dr. Bailey providing some additional feedback on that. Dana, if you're there, if you can provide that.
Hi, Selena. Yeah, I'm here. I'm Dana Cogswell. I'm the Director of Institutional Research. Yeah, in our breakout group, we were just kind of talking about the reasons why historically organizations have started including diversity as part of their mission. And originally, some of the evolution was based around legal action, affirmative action. It's the right thing to do, and we need to appear like we're doing the right thing. And then there were even some like marketing reasons why it would happen. Like, okay, if we show that we're hiring these sorts of people, then we'll have more consumers of these kinds of diverse populations. And then it moved into, rather than needing to do it or wanting to do it for business purposes, into an embracing of the value that the diverse populations can really add to an organization, and how even now we have probably different organizations in our community that are at different spots in this evolution, and individually we might be thinking about these things in different ways. And so it's really just understanding our history so we can all be on the same page of moving towards that embracing difference and the value.
Thank you, Dana. Dr. Bailey, would you like to add to that from a historical perspective and how we ended up where we are now and how we're approaching DEI today?
Yes, first of all, I want to thank Dana and her group for such a rich conversation and discussion. I always say we can't know where we're going unless we know where we have been. So please help me celebrate Dana and her team and all of the teams that took time to really have some robust conversation. I would just say to Dana's point, the role of diversity, equity, and inclusion has evolved. We started off with just asking for civil rights. The civil rights movement was not about human rights, just for people to act civil. We progressed from there, from the 60s, and moved into the late 70s and 80s, and noticed as a country the importance of our diversity. And that meant everyone, right? Whether it was a white male, whether it was a white straight male or black male, all of those differences, as we talked about at the beginning of today's strategy session today, everyone started to take center stage place on what we were as a nation, recognizing our beauty in our differences. It evolved obviously in the late 90s and 2000s to focus more on inclusion. And though we recognize that we're different, we're not all the same, and we can celebrate that, we kind of did a pitch stop and didn't include those diverse perspectives and backgrounds and experiences in all of our workspaces or in our community or in major role decision-making practices. Since then, we have made tremendous ground in making sure that now equity has been brought into that conversation, and now really accessibility. right? So it's DEI, but it's also DEIA, or idea, because we're evolving to see that it's going to take all of us, every one of us, recognizing all of our levels of privilege, recognizing our historic and systemic barriers, and then recognizing the collectiveness of us together making history, right? The eyes of history are always on us to determine what will we make of our new state, what will we be in the future. I believe that DEIA has a rich space, especially to make sure that everyone has access, everyone's voice is included. And let me just say this, Selena, while I have the microphone. DEI and DEIA is messy. Can somebody just put that in the chat? Hashtag messy. It's messy at times. It's gritty. It can be very sensitive. It can even almost be dismissive or excluding for some to think I don't belong in this space. And how do I have conversation when I'm thinking I'm going to be pointed fingers at, or my voice won't be counted? LCC has an amazing opportunity to dismantle those myths and provide safe, comfortable environments for everyone to have a place and a voice to voice their thoughts, their experiences, their diverse backgrounds, so that together we win. And that means everybody, not just people that look like me, but especially those that don't look like me. It's your voice. You won't be displaced. You won't feel as if, listen, I'm a good fighter. I'm from Flint. I'm a good fighter. So let me hear somebody coming against you because you have an opinion. I'm going to fight for you because I know the importance of your voice being there. It is my intention, and I know Dr. Robinson, this entire effort to make sure that the spaces that we provide, these conversations and these plannings, and more importantly, the culture is an inclusive culture. That's the big audacious idea, that everybody is included in these conversations and have an opportunity to share their perspective as well as grow from their perspective.
Thank you, Dr. Bailey. That was amazing. And thank you, Dana. I appreciate that because I think it's important for us all to kind of remember the history and how we got here. Now, I don't see any questions in the chat here. Patrick, are there any questions in the YouTube area?
There's not.
Okay. One of the other conversations that I listened to in one of the groups was the importance of making sure that we are recruiting our students and that we're making sure that we have a diverse student body when we talk about DEI. So I'm going to ask Dean Miller to join us and just really give a brief overview of what we're doing with respect to DEI and recruitment of our students. Dean Miller?
Good afternoon. Currently, well, remotely, we are still continuing to participate in high school visits, although they're virtual. So we have 4 student engagement coordinators. They serve as recruiters for the college. And in a normal situation, they go to high schools and do day and night visits. They participate in community programming. We have the Career and Program Showcase, which the engagement coordinators participate in. We have Facebook Live events every week. So yeah, we are actively recruiting all students, but have a focus on increasing diversity. And we will be partnering more with Dr. Bailey's office to make sure that we aren't missing any opportunities.
Thank you, Dean Miller. I really appreciate that. And thank you again to everyone for lending your voice. This is really important. And even after today, if you come up with some additional thoughts, please send an email to strategicplan@lcc.edu. And hopefully you all have seen that we do have on our internal strategic planning website, we are posting the videos from these sessions as well as all the presentations and all of the worksheets, so that if you have additional thoughts, you can have those worksheets, you can fill them out, and you can turn them into strategicplan@lcc.edu. As I mentioned earlier, this is not the only way that we try to get feedback from our employees. In March, you will receive an employee survey that's really going to be focused on your experience as an employee. And when that launches on March 22nd, I really do encourage everyone to participate, because your voice matters. And also, just so you know, we have a student forum next week. We have a student and community listening sessions. They're going to take place on March 3rd and March 5th. Those are both on our website. We encourage you to attend, and any faculty members, we encourage you to encourage your students to attend. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Robinson, who will close out this session. Dr. Robinson, and again, thank you, Dr. Bailey, for everything today. That was awesome.
Thank you so much, Dr. Samuel. How about a big round of applause for Dr. Bailey? I know she already got one. I was joking with her that next time she has an opportunity to do this, she should bring a little more energy and passion to her presentation. I want to thank everyone for your earnest participation. And I want to echo something Dr. Bailey said, because it's important to underscore this idea, because we will be having conversations like this. Diversity, equity, inclusion, maybe more so than any other topic that we talk about, will require us giving others grace and being ready for the mess that she talked about. As a society, as a country, we are collectively going through a lot of things together. And if we're going to do it with being real with one another, we'll have to have a high degree of comfort with being uncomfortable. And if you've been to Dr. Bailey's Courageous Conversations, and you've interacted with our RISE fellows and the great people from all over our campus who do DEI on faculty and staff, you know that they're good at creating a safe space for us to have conversations like this. So I want to thank you for that. I want to thank you for all the input. Those of you who talk to students and community members, please talk up these community sessions coming up in early March. The more input we have in this process, the better the outcome will be. And so I just want to thank everyone for your participation. It's wonderful to see our campus community coming together to have these conversations. I think we're going to have a much better product that comes out of the planning process when we see it. So thank you very much for your energy. Enjoy the sunshine and have a safe weekend.